Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, the Peer-to-Peer Panel Discussion. Discover how community colleges are designing grant and project tracking applications with the newest no-code platform, AGS Prime. We'll go ahead and get started. First of all, just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a 45-minute or so live presentation. So for those of you who are here, with your telephones, please don't use your hold button. We'd really appreciate that. Everyone else, please mute your speakers unless you have a question. You can certainly unmute yourself and interrupt and ask a question, or use the chat feature in GoToTraining. There are some handouts available also in the GoToTraining control panel. Those will also be emailed to you after the session. So let's go ahead and get started. So everybody, again, welcome to this afternoon session. My name is Susan Harden. I'm a vice president here at American Government Services, and I'll be your facilitator today. I'm really excited to have so many people with us from all over the country. It's nice to see all of us able to connect more easily than ever, with all of us being so much more used to these web meetings. It's been a pretty crazy year, so thanks everyone for being here today. We're going to go ahead and let me just share with you a little bit of information about our newest product, which is called AGS Prime. This is a web-based, no-code platform used to build and manage applications and data. This is what's called a PaaS, or a PaaS, or a PaaS, depending on how you say it, a platform as a service. Unlike software as a service, or SaaS, that you may be familiar with. Now that you've heard PaaS, you probably hear it all over the place. It really is the new approach to software like ours. So with Prime, you have, if you have an idea for a database, you can give it a name, and the platform will deploy an empty application ready for you to configure that application with data sets, forms, views, and queries, all with no programming. Here at AGS, we've been supporting workforce, education, and training organizations and grants for more than 20 years, including WIA, WIOA, as it is referred to now, of course, all of the 4 rounds of TACT grants, plus several H-1B grants over several years. In fact, 2 of our colleges today are using our Scaling Apprenticeship pre-built application template for compliant data collection and federal DOL ETA WIPS reporting. And our first panelist will be talking about how they are getting started with Prime as they are building out their very first application from scratch. So let me give a very special thank you to our guest presenters today. We really appreciate them all being here. Today we have an impressive panel of real leaders in the community college world. Our panelists today from the Northeast Iowa Community College are Julie Anderson, the Career and Workforce and Work-Based Learning Coordinator, Gina Giesing, the Director of Career Services, and from the Alabama Community College, we have Community College System. We have Vicki Olson, Dr. Olson, who is the Executive Director of Research Grants and Development, as well as Lisa Rowland, the Grants Coordinator, also with Research Grants and Development. And then hailing from Pima Community College, we have Amanda Lopez, who's the Program Director of the IRAM grant, along with Adrian Jones, the Program Coordinator for Apprenticeship grants. So let's just go ahead and do a very quick audience poll. So while that pops up in your GoToTraining control panel, just a quick question. On average, how many different grants and or projects that require tracking are you managing each year? A is 3 or less, B 4 to 10, C 11 to 20, D more than 20, or E I just don't know. Just either too many to keep track of, or I just don't keep track of it. just go ahead and let me know what your responses are. And while that's up on the screen, please go ahead and provide those answers. That would be great. We will continue on for the sake of time and keeping us all on schedule here today. So the learning goals for today, let's jump right into the agenda. I'm really excited about today's webinar because I'm not going to be doing all of the talking for a change. We're going to hear from our experts. We'll hear first how a community college is using AGS Prime to build out their work-based learning application without needing to write any code. Then we'll hear from Alabama about how they are using the AGS Prime system to meet reporting compliance requirements for their federal grant, their H-1B Scaling Apprenticeship grant. And finally, we'll hear from Pima about how they are using the self-registration data and how that's being managed for their H-1B Scaling Apprenticeship grant as well. We will have time for questions and discussion at the end of the session. And of course, please feel free, as always, to chat in questions during the session, and we can review those at the end as well. We'll be doing something just a little bit different today. For those of you who want to stick around, I'll be doing it after the webinar session. So the primary purpose for today's webinar is for you to hear from your peers. I know there's been some expressed interest to have a demonstration of the AGS Prime system. I'm going to save that for after the first webinar, if you will. For those of you who want to stick around, please do. Panelists, you can stay or leave as you wish, and then we will transition to more of a product demo for the second part of the session today. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our first speakers. From the Northeast Iowa Community College, again, we have with us Gina Giesing and Julie Anderson. Gina is the Director of Career Services at Northeast Iowa Community College, where she leads career development efforts for the college and serves as the Iowa Intermediary Network Coordinator for the NIC region. Gina's primary focus is promoting high-quality work-based learning and career experiences following the work-based learning continuum for students in grades K through 14. She is also involved with the Perkins CLNA process at both the secondary and post-secondary levels. Julie is the Career and Work-Based Learning Coordinator at Northeast Iowa Community College. She divides her time at the college between career services, supporting career development, and reporting data for the work-based learning continuum for students in grades K through 12 through the Iowa Intermediary Network. So I am disappointed to say that the recording for the portion of time that Northeast Iowa was presenting was very poor quality and such that we were not able to include it in this recording. I apologize. So we will pick up with the next set of speakers. Thank you very much. From the state of Alabama, we are very pleased to have joined us from the Alabama Community College System, Dr. Vicki Olson and Lisa Rowland. Dr. Olson serves as the Executive Director of Research, Grants, and Development at the Alabama Community College System, or ACCS. She has nearly 28 years of experience in higher education. Lisa serves as Grant Coordinator for the Alabama Community College System and is responsible for monitoring and implementation of state, federal, and privately funded grants awarded to ACCS. She has 12 years of experience in workforce development. So Vicki, would you like to introduce a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Want to make sure everybody can hear me?
We are hearing you.
Great. We have a scaling apprenticeship grant that we won in let's see, it was July of 2019, and we have been then working on it for about a year. It was a $12 million award, which was a big deal for us. It was a big deal for me personally because that was the first grant I ever wrote. And it's a new experience managing
Good job.
grants for me. Lisa has some experience managing a Department of Labor grant, but I was fairly new to this and was totally, really unprepared for the level of reporting and accountability and documentation and that goes with a grant this size. And this particular grant for our funding level requires that we serve 5,000 participants over a 4-year period. So once we were notified of the grant and got close to being our budget approved and that kind of thing, we started thinking about how we were going to track all these participants, because we hadn't thought about that when we were writing the grant. And we investigated several pieces of software that are commercially available, and also considered developing something in-house, because we do have a full IT division here at our system office, and we have a database administrator and that kind of thing. So we do have some people with some, but even though we have those resources, I don't think we would have been prepared to develop a system that would not only track the 89 pieces of data that's required for each participant, but would also submit that data in a format that is compliant with the DOL WIP system and follows all of their logic rules. I think it would have been really, really tough for us to try to develop that in-house with as little experience as we have on staff with doing something like that. Like I said, even though we have database administrators and IT folks, they don't primarily deal with grants and with federal compliance with grants. So I think that would have been a really heavy lift for them. And the more we got to exploring what DOL was requiring, the more we realized we really needed a solution that was sort of off the shelf that could get us up and running very quickly. So that's when we happened upon, luckily, we happened upon AGS, and at the time it was called G-Stars, and they were just coming out with their new product Prime. And Lisa and I investigated it, and I'm going to switch, if you don't mind, I'm going to switch my camera over to Lisa so she can tell you a little bit about what attracted us to the software in the first place.
We're not hearing you, Lisa.
Sorry.
There you go.
Well, as Vicki mentioned, for us looking at AGS Prime was really important because it provided for us an efficiency with approximately 20 to 22 colleges across the state that were going to be partners as part of the Scaling Apprenticeship. We wanted to make sure we had something that we could collect data, ensure PII, and just have a systematic approach to data management in general to make sure that we are following all the guidelines of DOL. So when we looked at the demo, we really liked what we saw because we knew that the information we were collecting was exactly what we needed for the grant. Also, we knew that each of our colleges could follow and put in their data as required. And I think as you kind of get to learn the system, there's faults in there. So if they put in a piece of data that's incorrect, it automatically tells them that this is incorrect and this is why. So for us, it was just an extra measure of checks and balances to help us understand what we needed to enter and also help us identify errors in advance. So it was just a really culmination of all those different things to help us really gather what we needed, assess it, and then really just providing the reports to DOL as required. So for us, that was important, but it was also important for us that as we enter that data, we're entering a lot of information. So also knowing that that data is ours. that when we need that data, that we can pull it, and it's our information. So that was also important from us, from that perspective, is that if we needed to collect this data and extract it, that we have that ability to do so. So that was also extremely important for us when we were looking at the software system. And I think also, as Northeast is doing, we also looked at it from that perspective too, that I know Prime, back then it was AGS or G-Stars, but with Prime, we knew that we could collect this data for scaling apprenticeship and dedicate it to that data intake and management. But we also understand that in the future, if we wanted to expand on that, that we have the leverage to do that. Say if we want to make sure and start logging in our work-based learning, I guess the best way I can explain it is that it's a house. It can be a house with different rooms, so that we could definitely collect our scaling apprenticeship data in one room. But then if we decided to add a new room, we could that collect that data, but there would still be a common area for them to kind of hang out. So I think it's that kind of, am I relaying that correctly, Susan, sort of?
It's very interesting, yes.
Okay. So that's the best way I can. I'm a visual person, so for us, it was just really being able to know what we needed to collect in data, how we could manage it, and then future how we could pull in other resources should we want to expand on that data. So and the team was really helpful in meeting with us and showing us the demos, answering questions. So it was a process with us involved, because we're definitely question askers, but it was what we needed, and so far has been very useful. I'm gonna switch out and let Vicki finish out.
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to ask us any questions about our experience so far with it or not, but I would like to tell everybody that the customer service experience has been phenomenal. And I think back on, if we had gone the direction of developing something in-house and we had received an update from the Department of Labor that said they were logic structure on a Perl element 106 and 105, and we needed to adjust our file accordingly. I can imagine, trying to send that information to our developer in-house and waiting months. Not to say that they're busy, they're very busy, but with AGS Prime, they are so responsive, so very good to get back to us so quickly, and they stay on top of the changes that come out from the Department of Labor. They monitor that communication, and they will often pick up on those updates quicker than we would pick up them ourselves as a grantee. So that has been so helpful that we don't have to worry about updating our software with the latest changes that come out from the Department of Labor, and those do come out fairly frequently.
Well, thank you for that. Go on. Sorry, cat alert. Any other questions from the group for Alabama? Okay. Let me thank you for that. I thank you for your kind words. That's very, very nice of you. I'm glad that our team is providing you that level of service. So we'll continue to do that. So last but not least, as I live vicariously, at least weather-wise, through our next guest from here in the upper Midwest of Wisconsin, where it's cold and rainy today, I'm really pleased to introduce our speakers from the Pima Community College in Arizona, Amanda Lopez and Adrian Jones. Amanda serves as the IRAM program manager at Pima Community College in Tucson, an awardee of the DOL Scaling Apprenticeship Grant as well, Amanda manages the implementation and compliance of the grant and leads the college's efforts with its consortium and community partners. Adrian is the program coordinator at Pima Community College in Tucson for that DOL Scaling Apprenticeship grant, the IRAM. In her role, she supports PCC as the lead and 4 sub-recipients with data, training, and participant case management. Amanda and Adrian, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. There's a little bit of lag. It takes some time for things to travel to the West Coast, as we know. So my apologies with any delays. Thank you for allowing us to talk a little bit about our experiences with the self-registration tool. We are also on a scaling apprenticeship grant. We were awarded a little over $4 million, and our commitment is to about to enroll about 3,200 participants in our scaling apprenticeship grant. So it's a slightly different scale. But it is one that we are working with as part of a consortium. Us at Pima Community College are the lead, but we also have academic partners in 4 other schools throughout Arizona. We have partners at Central Arizona College in Coolidge, and then 3 schools that are part of the Maricopa County Community College District in Phoenix. Mesa Community College, Estrella Mountain Community College, and Gateway Community College. So we have a lot as far as distance and school-wise that we're working with. And on top of that, there happens to be a pandemic that's also happening, if anyone hasn't heard yet. But this is why the self-registration tool for us was very helpful in doing outreach to participants. And to echo a lot of what's already been said from the other panelists in Alabama and Northeast Iowa, this tool came after we already made the decision to work with AGS. And this was something that came out because of the COVID-19 situation. And again, kind of echoing what Alabama was just talking about with the responsiveness of AGS, the fact that they were able to put this feature together in such short notice, knowing that a lot of community colleges and other entities that are working on these grants are now facing a very big issue of not being able to have face-to-face interactions with colleagues, employers, and now participants. It was really vital for us to have this because of the fact that right now, us along with our other partner colleges, we are all now working remotely and now going to be doing coursework and interactions with employers and participants all virtually. So the fact now that we have a feature that allows us to collect some of this initial information from participants has been really, really vital. This came to us earlier in the spring. We actually started to recruit some participants in March, right before our schools decided to shut down for the rest of this year. And one of the big issues that we were concerned about was how do we continue enrollment in our programs if we are not able to meet with them one-on-one. Our forms directly related to this grant are PDFs. And at first we thought maybe we could email them or have them fax or whatnot, any other way. But we know that with a lot of participants too, there's issues with connectivity. Even just the fact of having to make a fillable PDF could have been a challenge. And someone's ability to actually be able to fill it out. We don't know what their computer capabilities are. And a lot of people actually don't have computers. They use their phones. So the fact that this was created that allows participants to provide some of their initial information was, again, extremely helpful. And as you can see, the form does collect some initial information from our participants. They fill this out. It's a direct link that we are able to send to them. And also, again, it's not too overwhelming. We know that with individuals, if you give them something lengthy to fill out, it's not going to keep their attention for very long. So the fact that it does capture enough information to get the ball rolling, but it's not too long where maybe it's too cumbersome or confusing, has been another helpful feature of this form. I'm going to let Adrian talk more about the training aspect of how we kind of presented this to our consortium partners and the training that we provided to them and guidance regarding how to utilize this form.
Hello, I'm Adrian. Thank you for having me, Susan. So first, I want to let you know when I made the decision to purchase the AGS database. I say when because there were so many things going on at the time, and it was one of those things where time was of the essence. I was hired onto a grant, the Scaling Apprenticeship grant. It's not the first grant I've worked. The first one I worked was about a month prior to me being hired on for the Scaling Apprenticeship. So I worked 2 apprenticeship grants, one through the AACC, which a lot of the Scaling Apprenticeship grantees have as well. So for me, it was compliance. I needed to make sure that we were compliant with the 89 data elements. And so when I went in search of a database, I was looking at 3 companies, and my director gave me a flyer that she picked up from the NCWE conference, and it was for the G-Stars. So I started looking into it. I had a demo with Susan, and it was amazing. It was the most user-friendly system. It was a system that I could see training our consortium members on easily. I do not have a technology background. So I am an airframe and power plant mechanic by trade for aircraft. So for me, this was a difficult undertaking to work for a grant, to work in a college consortium, and now run a database. So once I decided on AGS Prime, it became clear that I made the right decision. Because from a compliance perspective, and as you all know, if you have the Scaling Apprenticeship grant, the 89 data elements have a ton of rules involved. And just trying to keep each participant profile compliant, basically with all of those 89 data elements, and then doing it for thousands of participants would have been an undertaking that I would not have been able to handle as one person working 2 grants. So this one has been very easy in that respect. AGS is completely on board with the DOL updates. So I do very little now when it comes to that. And they do put out their resources after the fact, after they've incorporated those updates into the system. They put out the resources that let me know what's changed, and then I pass that on to our consortium members. So it's a very easy transition. Our consortium members, our partners, have been able to easily access the system and utilize it. It's just, yeah, it's been great. So, and then the self-registration tool has allowed us, and I know Amanda touched on this, but we were in a bind in the beginning where we had some pre-apprentices we needed to put in with one of our colleges, but they had not signed the documents that we needed them to sign, that acknowledging that they were part of a grant. So with the self-registration tool, we were easily able to incorporate that verbiage into it, and now they can simply go on, fill out their demographic information. They do an electronic signature, and now I have the ability to contact them and do the rest of the case management services, which has made it extremely easy post-COVID or in this quarantine phase. Arizona, as you know, our numbers were going up again. We win. So we're on lockdown again. And this self-registration tool has been key in helping us keep this grant going. And a lot of our consortium members are still enrolling people in their programs, and their programs are now online. And so this allows us to also shift the grant and the participant level information to being online only.
Great. I have a question for you that has actually been chatted in. We talked about this a little bit earlier. What kinds of issues or bumps or hurdles or pushback have you had from any of your other partners or your schools as part of this for using self-reg?
Yeah.
Really none.
If any, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we did have a few hiccups on FERPA at first. I think but it was also back to our original registration form. What was important for us is that we model this as closely as possible to our paper form. One, so that way we had consistent information on both forms, because essentially this is a way to substitute part of the paper form that we had originally created. So through that, there was some vetting that needed to happen with our schools regarding FERPA. But because in the context of this grant in particular, there wasn't a lot of FERPA related information that was shared or required, we were able to bypass that. But other than the actual form itself, like Adrian said, none. If any, our partners were excited to have a digital version of this. And it's very different than, say, if we were to try and create one, say, on a Google Doc, because of the fact that the information then automatically gets put as part of a participant file. So instead of having to do a lot of that manual data entry from, say, a Google form or SurveyMonkey or another type of tool, it automatically is in the system, which saves a lot of time with data entry. Now, it does require, for like Adrian said as well, that additional case management part. But for our grant, it's perfect because that is a requirement that someone from our team provide some case management and talk and communicate with the student. So it's a way to get some initial information, but it's still, up to each institution to follow up and collect the rest of the information. But the fact that this is a really, really good head start, and one that keeps all of the information within the database too. We don't have, multiple documents floating around or multiple forms. It's all in one place.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Okay. Any other final last words of wisdom, Adrian or Amanda?
I'd just like to say that as we go forward, other departments at our college have asked me about our database because they've heard me tell them, before we left the office, how easy it was, and yeah, I was enjoying using it. So, and we have other work-based learning areas in workforce have looked into it as well, and did write for another grant, and unfortunately we did not receive that grant, but we definitely were writing AGS Prime into it because we want, going forward, any apprenticeship grants that we apply for, we want to kind of keep it all in the same database. It's the same people, same staff working it. So to not reinvent the wheel, to make it just as easy as we can, we want to just keep using the same one and adding on to it. So this has been critical in our compliance. And it's been critical for Amanda in getting a clean WIPS report, so each month or each quarter. So it's been very good, and the customer support is top notch. I mean, I can send an email and I immediately have a response, and I can mess up something and I immediately have it fixed. So it's been great for me.
Does that concern you? There's a little big brother going on here? No, I'm kidding.
Yes. And I need that. I need an adult, and AGS Prime is my adult. So I like it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Okay, so let me swizzle back over here to the slide. And this is really our last slide of the day. We're at about the 1 hour and 47-minute mark. And to keep us on time, this is intended to be a 45-minute ish session today. So does anyone else have any questions that you'd like to unmute yourselves and ask questions, or chat into the chat box within your GoToTraining control panel that we haven't already discussed? Anybody have anything that you'd like to ask of myself or of the panel?
Susan?
Yes.
It's Eileen at Pellissippi.
Hey, Eileen, how are you?
In Tennessee, where it's very hot today. Send some cool weather, please. Is there any chance that AGS would consider creating a template library? Because the last presentation, I mean, that's ideal for some of the things that we do. And it would be, instead of having to recreate the wheel individually, would it be possible to have a template library where you could work off of that and then maybe tweak it to what you needed?
Great question. Yes. The short answer is yes. We have been talking about that for the last, I don't know, couple of months or so. And I'm sure that there will be some semblance of a template library for in one of a couple of flavors. And probably sooner rather than later. So those couple of flavors are templates that are pre-built and built out like some of these very sophisticated long time to kind of build things like closing the skills gap or scaling apprenticeship or state expansion grants and those kinds of Pearl based things that people might continue to subscribe to for that pre-built. We're not going to give you a lot of changes to be made to it so you stay in compliance. The other group of templates is probably more like what you're thinking, which is we can put together some templates that represent best, I shouldn't even use this, but a best practice or recommended forms to get started with a CRM, an employer outreach piece, if you didn't already have that in your system. Or self-registration process, or some other kinds of things that we hear about from customers that maybe you'll come up and tell us what we should be building so that it would be really helpful for you. And those kinds of templates will be, again, my term, and you guys know I'm not a programmer, I'm not the lead technologist here, but it would give you some starter forms, some starter fields, maybe even something that you say, yeah, that's really a good idea, but I'm going to break it all down and I'm going to start over. But now AGS has at least given me some ideas. So there's going to be sort of two categories of templates from which to use. Some will be for purchase, and some will be for use and take it apart and do what you want to do. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we've been talking about that in more earnest here in the last 30 days, and I think we'll probably start to see something emerge in the product probably in the next, if I had to guess, probably in the next 60 days, maybe 90 days, you'll start seeing accessibility to some semblance of templates. Another question has come in. Is the digital signature built into the system, or do you need a vendor's software first in order to utilize the digital signature? Great question. So I'm going to take part of that. Then you guys can take another part. It's really a two-part answer. One is within the Prime system, those self-registration forms, what you're seeing is a field for someone to type in their name, and the system will accept that text as a digital signature. That's the easy part. Prime takes care of that for you. It's just another field on the form. The other part of it has to do with policy and what's accepted within your state for accepting that digital signature. It does not require any additional vendors' software in order to support that which you see in the Prime self-registration form itself. It's simply part of the Prime system as a field on that form capturing that data that has been made available privately and in a secure environment through Prime. Pima or Alabama, any other comments that you have as you went through your exercises to add to accept digital signatures?
We did not go the self-registration route, so we didn't have to address that. We created an application which we're using electronically, but it is not connected to the Prime system in any way. primarily because we wanted to collect all of the information from the student at one time that falls into two different modules in Prime. Part of it falls in the student profile section, and another portion of it falls in the program section. And we wanted to collect all of that in one place.
Okay, Alabama, any comments? I'm sorry, Arizona, Pima?
I was going to say, I think you nailed it as far as, each state and each institution, as to what their guidelines are regarding digital signatures. And I know, as I mentioned, it only covers a portion. So other institutions that may utilize this, depending on how their intake process goes for participants, would still either need that through case management, or would maybe still have their participants still need to fill out very specific forms that their college or their consortium or their grant may still require. So I think it's still on each school's basis as to, this may not be, say, like a final signature, but at least it's an acknowledgement that what they have provided, what it is being utilized for. But I agree. I think it's just up to, the policies that are set up by institutions and even states.
Great, thank you. Another question has come in. Is there the capability to capture data for multiple grants yet, or keep it separate? So I'll take that one as well, and you guys can chime in. So specifically for our two folks here, Pima and Alabama, who are using that dedicated pre-built template for their H-1B apprenticeship grant. So that template is designed to support that very heavy rules-based grant and application. Could you use it? Could our customers use it for more than one grant? Yes, but that particular single application is probably best geared to keep that data segregated into the H-1B grant because of the WIP's data requirement rules. However, they have the ability to just create another application for another grant within their platform. And if some of the forms or fields or data sets from their scaling apprenticeship grant is useful in grant B, for example, then you can have, create that second application and, pretty easily leverage the architecture of that particular grant. If you have another project that isn't so heavily rules-based, that all of the data can live together and play nice, where we don't have to be bound to, like in H-1B, where the feds only allow certain values because that's what's compliant for federal reporting. But you have some grants where, let's say, for example, demographics are more, my word, universal demographics. It doesn't really matter what what the values are, because lots of different grants can use the same thing. Then absolutely use one application that you build to support lots of different grants. Or if it's easier, build separate applications. It's really up to you. It's a business process decision versus a technology decision. And that's really the kind of position we want to help you be in. Take that technology off the table and think about it more as an analyst. Does that help answer the question, Nicole?
Yes, hi, this is Nicole. Yes, it does. We manage multiple grants, and I wanted to take this to our district and perhaps maybe have a demo, but we have federally funded grants, state funded grants, and that's why I wanted to know if this platform could support all of those. And I don't know the correct technical terminology. Would it be partitioned so that a skills development fund grant, that data can be kept independent of a TRIO grant or an apprenticeship grant? So would there be a tab that the person that's managing the apprenticeship could just go to that data set.
Yep. Yes. Short
Okay.
answer is yes. That flexibility is built right into the architecture itself. And again, the hard part, if there is a hard part, and you know, there is, you have to think about your data. I think Julie and Gina would attest to the fact that you have to have a really clear idea of what you want to track and how you want to report on that first, and then kind of work backwards from there as to, you know, what do you want to build? Does it all fit within one application? Does it fit within multiple applications? You know, just what is the best response? I'll tell you what, if you want to stick around after the panel, I'm going to be showing you how to build an application. You can see how simple it is.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And Susan, if I could just interject, some of my experience with the 2 apprenticeship grants, if I'm looking at braiding funding, which I'm assuming some of the community colleges will be doing if they have multiple grants, with the system so far, we're able to utilize different sections of the templates like case notes. And we're able to put that information in showing how we're braiding the funding with another grant without mixing the data, because that's not what I want to do. I don't want to mix a DLL grant with a state grant, but I do want to braid the funding. And so I do need those points of contact, and I do need to have the ability to filter, you know, kind of based on that. And that's what we have with our AGS Prime system now.
Okay. Well, good. So it is exactly 2 p.m. Central. I am going to say thank you all very, very much for being here. Panelists, thank you so much for your time and all your kind words today and your support. And I'll talk with you, I'm sure, later this week. So if not later today. Audience, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Again, we're going to do an after the webinar. So if you want to stick around, just stay right here. I'm going to switch gears. Panelists, you are free to go unless you want to watch me build apps. But Julie, don't get excited. I'm not the expert. I have some experience. Anyway, thank you all very much. Everybody take a bio break, get some coffee or whatever you want to do, and I'll stay right here and re-swizzle my desktop, and we'll do a quick demo of AGS Prime. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Susan.
Thank you.
I'll stay with you though.
Oh, yay.
Yeah,
Oh, no, now the pressure's on. The pressure's on.
And watch too. If I might learn something.
Oh, boy. Okay, so after the webinar, here it is. Oh, and I do want to point out to everyone, you know, go over to our site, agsprime.com. It's a kind of a new site. It's going to have lots of good information about AGS Prime, scaling your apprenticeship and closing the skills gap. And that's going to be sort of our go-to site going forward for all things Prime. So let me get my screen going here, and I'm going to close everybody's app so I don't accidentally do anything here. So let me just go ahead and launch my demo site. Everyone should be seeing my screen. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. This is just one of my demo sites. So it's so I have lots of demo applications here, my H-1B application, the summer youth program, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go to my admin console. So when we, oops, I want to show one quick thing. I'm going to go to this AGS Prime site. And on this Prime site, this graphic, this no-code application builder, is really intended to walk you through the process to build a simple application. As you've heard me say, you really start with an idea, start with a new application. And once you have an idea of what that new application is and basically the kind of data that you want to capture, you'll build your data sets. You know, build a data set, put fields in that data set. You know, what data do we need to capture? And we're going to create forms, create forms to, you know, to capture the data so we can start collecting data, create views and arrange your views so you can see your data, and then we'll create a module in order to organize the workflow of the forms and the views, and then you're ready to start using your application, just for a really, really simple app. So I just want to kind of, you know, bring that nice little graphic right to the fore here on AGS Prime. Let me go over here and I'm going to do just that. I have a new idea. I'm going to create a new application. And I'm going to click my Create New Application button. And I'm going to call this Summer Job Fair. I'm just going to make this up. And I'm not going to go through every field for the sake of time. I'm just going to grab my alias. This is the application ID that's going to acknowledge this as a brand new application. And that's all I need to do, basically at the simplest point, to set up a new application. This is, I'll give it a little description. This is for tracking applicants at the summer job fair at the college. Boom, done. Save. So now I've just created a brand new application. I'm going to go back to all of my applications. We see my list of all those applications. Here's the new one I just created, Summer Job Fair. So now if I launch this, right, I have a brand new application that has a title. I'm going to launch it. I now have a newly provisioned application and its own dedicated server within the AWS, the Amazon Web Services environment. Doesn't do much, right? It has a title, and that's all there is to it. I have my little person icon over here that is just part of the provisioning of a brand new application for security and data backups and all that kind of good stuff. I'm going to leave that here, and I'm going to go back to my application, and we're just going to build this out a little bit and check back with that and see how that's going. I'm going to edit this. So now that I have my new database created in its simplest form, I can now start to edit and build out that application using the admin, what we call the admin console. So Adrian, this is new to you. This is what you're going to be spending some time with on Friday with Derek and myself, specifically on Friday, focusing on the queries portion. So you'll get a major training on queries on Friday. So the first step in this process, as it says, step 1, create some data sets. So what do we want to track? I'm going to create a new data set because I don't currently have any. And I'm going to call this the job application. And I'm going to give it an alias so I can give it its primary key. So this is my job application. That's just the name of the data set. So now I have a data set, but I don't have any fields on that. So I'm going to go ahead and put some fields on this data set by editing the data set. I have my primary key. For those of you who are analysts, you're going to know that's what a primary key, you need to have that. I'm going to create just a handful of quick fields here. First name, we want to be able to capture first name. Give it the alias. It's going to be a string. I'm just going to type it in. I'll make this required and I'll save it. Add another field for last name. Make that required. Add another field for date of birth. It's probably a field we're going to want. We'll call this a date field, we'll make that required. It's going to be important information in terms of hiring. And we'll create one last field called employment status. And we'll make this a categorical field. And I'll say this is not required at the moment. We're going to type in some values, and we're going to say employed. So I'm building my little table down here. Not employed. Employed part-time. And student not working. I'm just making this up. These can be any values you want. Save the value. So now I have my table. These are all the what we call a categorical value, a drop-down list, or whatever we want to call this. Could be a radio button, a drop-down for this field. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now I've got a few fields on my form. And that's all we're going to do for this form, or this data set for now. I'm going to go back to my job fair. Now I'm going to create a form so that that data set can, and those fields can live on the form. So I create a new form. I don't currently have any in my list. And I will call this the job fair registration form. And I'm going to have the display label just be job fair registration. What data set do I want to use? I'm just going to grab my from my drop down. I just have one data set so far, so I'm just going to grab that. That's the data set that I'm going to use with those fields. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that. When I save that, I have some additional controls that pop up here on my screen. So I can grab it just takes me right to my layout. So here's the form settings. Here's my layout. I'm going to just drag my fields over. I have a preview button. Oh, that's a little boring. So I'm going to just go ahead and make a little change. Just really briefly here, I'm not going to go through all of the stylistic controls that you have at your fingertips. So I just want to make this a little bit neater on the form, just for the fun of it. I want to make each of these fields just 50% wide. And my employment status field is currently a drop down. I actually want to make that a radio button, so it has a different look and feel on the form itself. And I'm going to make my columns are two, so it's going to be side by side as opposed to one long one. So it's just nice and neat. I'm going to save that. Go back to my form. And let me preview my form. So we see we have the side by side. It's not a complete WYSIWYG, but it gives you an idea as you're designing forms, you know, what the field layout is going to be. And you can change the background color and all kinds of things like, you know, like that. It's super simple. Change out of preview. If I actually edit this field again, I can put in a sub-label. Please select the most oops, sorry. I can't type and talk. Okay. I'm just going to put a little subtitle in there. Save that. Preview that. So now you see I have a little subtitle. And if I wanted to write some business rules, like we have to have, you know, the date of birth can't be less than 1960 or 2000 or something, because we want to, if we said 2000 for like a summer youth program, that would be a really cool thing to do. Super simple. I'm not going to take time to do that today, because I just want to kind of walk you through this overall layout here, but that's where you have your business rules. So let's go back to our application. So now we have one data set. We have one form on which that data set lives with those fields. Let's create a view so we can view our data. And we're going to call this job registration view. Just grab that here. And what data set are we going to use? We're going to use the job application. And we can set how many we want per page. When deleting, what are we going to use? We're going to use last name. That'll be our source. We'll go up here, we'll save this. Once I save that, I have some more controls here for the columns. We're going to create our view by just dragging out the columns. Put in last name, first name, date of birth, and employment status. I'm going to drag this over here, oopsie, like that. I'll go ahead and add a couple of buttons. I'll delete the record. I'll put that button way over here on the far side because I don't want that to be very easy. And I will add an edit button. If I'm going to edit, what am I editing? From the job registration form. Okay. So I think we're all set with our view. Go ahead and save that. So now we have data set, a form, a view, and let's go ahead and create a module. Now I'm going to create my new module. This will be the summer job registration. That's the name of the module. I'll just copy that to be my display label. And I'll give it as alias. And I'm going to grab my form and drag that over. I only have one available form for the menu, so I just drag that over. Nice and simple. I have some additional options for views. So I have one view that I've created, right? So I just drag that over to her views to be included in the menu. If I had created a dozen views for how I want to see the data, I would see a dozen views that I've created. I just have the one, so I drag it over. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that. So now drag my banner layout so it actually has something to show up in the banner itself. So up here on what you're seeing here in Prime, where I see applications and users and settings, that big dark blue banner and the little person icon, that's what we call the banner. So I'm going to grab this module so it's displayed up in the banner. So Adrian, you know, I'm not a programmer. I haven't done any coding here. I don't know, I think I've done it right, but I haven't had to do any coding. So if I followed my steps, I'm going to go ahead and save this. My banner, okay, saved. So now with that all there, let me go to my summer jobs, my blank application. Let me go ahead and refresh this. And there's my new application. So for those of you who are used to using Prime, this is a similar layout with this module up here at the top. You could have lots of modules like you see self-registration and reports and admin and blah, blah, blah. Then you see this vertical navigation panel over here. And as you're building your own applications, these can be different colors. You can use fonts. You can put your logos here. You can have all kinds of personalization. I've just done this really quickly to show how simple it is to build something fast. If you have to go out to the job fair this afternoon and you want to build out a quick application to capture data, you don't want to use Google Docs because you want to have everything all in one place to do analytics later, or take a spreadsheet, God forbid. So here, I want to create a new oops, what did I do wrong? I'm going to create a new application. Oh, I did something wrong here. Let me go back to my summer jobs, my form. I guess I could create a new text block and give this a title. new registration form. Just save that. And I'll make this bold. And so we're actually building the HTML for you if you don't really know HTML like I don't really anymore. I used to. Just type it in and you can make the font, you know, heading 1 just by selecting that without having to do H1, et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead and save that. And I need to drag this off to the top of the form. Oop. Now I can preview it so I have just a little bit cleaner looking form. And save that. And my form settings. Okay, so let's see. What did Susan do incorrectly here? Forms. Oh, must have been something in my module maybe. Forms. Create new. Well, views, dashboard, pages. There it is. So there's my new job registration form. So if I've done this even remotely correctly, I'll put in my name. I was literally born yesterday, and I will put in my employment status and save the form. Now, granted, I could have done a lot more to make that attractive, but if you're trying to whip something together to head out the door this afternoon.
And then that's awesome. I mean, that's super, way faster than Access or any of the other databases I've worked with. How then would you have that reg form on a laptop or a tablet, or could you email it to the students? How do you get that to your prospective students or registrants?
Any of those options.
Okay.
And that's very much what our self-reg users on that Scaling Apprenticeship that you saw, and because we have real data in those systems, you know, I can only show, you know, just that form and not really show the overall business process.
Sure.
But what they're doing is they're taking, for example, this form that has a URL. And that URL is appended with each organization's unique identifier as part of the architecture in the system. And so then they email that, and they, you know, our users will just, you know, copy and paste that to the end of this address. They will take this address and share it with their partners. Their partners then, you know, colleges or employers in this case or whatever, will embed that URL, that address, into their web pages if they're trying to promote, you know, the Scaling Apprenticeship project or the Apprenticeship project for people to, you know, go hit that site, you know, click the big button and register. They can certainly email that link out if they want. You know, Prime doesn't care.
Okay.
And so what happens in those instances, and if you were going to use this in a way where you were going to distribute it, and you wanted to know which organization had sent that link, right? So you can track all that kind of stuff, and you could know which, you know, you could know if Susan Harden belongs to one of your schools, if you will. Then you would just put that organization field on the form. It could even be a hidden field so the user doesn't even know that it's there. And that field, because you're appending that with an organization ID, that field is automatically filled in. So the
Oh, okay.
student doesn't have to answer the question, where am I? Or what school do I belong to, or whatever. It's all done for you, depending upon, if you care. If you don't care, then a simple form like this, ship it out, grab the data. Then what you'd want to do, and what we've built in for workflow for the essay templates is of a couple of views over here in the view navigation. In fact, I can show my demo. You can kind of get a feel for what it is without seeing any real data. I'll show off my H1B demo, which has no real demo, no data, but it looks like what you saw earlier today. So we have this self-registration thing in my demo, I think, very similar form to what you saw with, you can have attachments and you have this EEOC, I agree, my consent, my digital signature. And then over on the participant management, where all the participant data is going to reside, we've created in this template, and you could do the same thing if your workflow, needed it, or you wanted to support that. Under my views, I've got something called approved participants, where all of the data, we might be changing this, Adrian, by the way, to say validated participants as opposed to approved. We're getting some confusion from some other customers that the word approved might mean they're approved for the program, or that they're approved for rapids, which is making some head spin. So we're going to be probably looking at changing that, maybe even as soon as the end of the week.
Okay.
Not sure to what, but probably something more like validated data or something like that. Just kind of stay away from that approval thing. But back to this. So approval process is, if we've got a self-registration form out in the ether and people are filling it in from all over the place, you emailed it out and we don't know where we don't care where it's coming from, but I come in the morning and my lucky job is to review all of the not yet approved participants, all those regs, those registrations that came in from yesterday and overnight. I have the lucky job of reviewing all of the not yet approved participants. So they're sitting over here in a list, in a view, not clogging up your approved participants list until some human, goes through it and says, oh yeah, this data looks, appropriate, however you define appropriate. They filled in the fields. There's no Mickey Mouses or Donald Ducks. I'd probably recommend having email and or cell phone as required. Just you have some method of following up if in fact you did want to follow up. You can say, yeah, this looks good. I'm going to assign this to Mary, and I'm going to approve that the data is valid. So I clearly have some required fields that they didn't fill in. So I'd have to either contact them or just make it up as I'm going along, which you probably wouldn't want to do. But you can see my save button isn't live until all of my required fields are filled in. And we have, you can put business rules, so I can't put anything more than 9 characters in here, et cetera, et cetera. We've got help text built in according to this particular grant, et cetera. So there's some really specific, hinky things in this grant that are required by the feds that you may never care about. But once I have all my required filled in, I can save the form. And now that person is going to show in my view, wherever she is.
Okay.
Mariah Smith, whoever she is, yeah.
Adrian, you guys were talking about having to claim WIPs.
Yes.
I'm guessing that's a secure upload to the Department of Labor, a report you've got to upload monthly or something. We have one called the TIF or lots that we have to upload to the state. Are you able to upload, or does this data have to be populated on DOL's form before it's uploaded?
Well, with our WIPS files, we're able to run a file and then upload it directly to the DOL database.
You are? Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And I'll let Susan talk more on that.
yeah. Well, DOL ETA has really, and I've been in, on this side of the fence as a vendor working for IBM and AGS and others for, back to the mid 90s. And as much as the Fed sometimes make us all pull our hair out or go gray, they have made some real advances in taking this whole WIA to WIOA and providing some approach to standards for data collection and for federal reporting. And the WIPS system, good, bad, or otherwise, is actually kind of cool in that for all these myriad of grants out there that the feds are managing under DOL ETA that are workforce WIOA sort of organized, they have started to allow third-party products like ours, or Excel spreadsheets for that matter. If you're capturing data in some other method than a case management system that the feds attempt to cobble together like Youth Build or whatever else they do, they're allowing people to use their own systems or their own protocols as long as it produces a CSV file and produces that file in exactly the precise specifications that they require. And this system does, in fact, spit out that CSV file so that our customers just save the file, toggle over to their WIPS system, log in with their secure credentials there, and just attach the file. And that's all there is to it.
Okay.
So yeah, we keep this system up to date with WIPS changes. So it's an advancement on one hand. I mean, you might say, well, 1995 wants their systems back because we could have done it then too. But they are starting to, do more and more to allow that. So it's kind of it's nice. I think it's nice for, grantees.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, you are welcome. So that's sort of my quickie, demo of how to build a quickie app in the system. There's a lot more, to it under the hood if you want to, which again, I'm probably not going to be the best person to take you through all of the admin console. Suffice it to say that, the H-1B Scaling Your Apprenticeship and the Closing the Skills Gap grants that do have hundreds of business rules and build and, click the magic button to produce that WIPS CSV file. It took us hundreds of hours of analysis to understand the depth and breadth and complexity of that application. But it took us probably, 3 to 4 weeks to build out that sophisticated application. And then of course, ongoing stuff. But we use the same platform to build out that system as you will use if you were using Prime, or Adrian, you will use once you get your admin console training to build out all the rest of your applications. The same environment that Julie and Gina are using to build their work-based learning application. All with no code. I mean, granted, we've got an army of computer programmers, but they didn't have to program anything to build out that application. They've spent 3 or 4 years building Prime, but that's so that those of us who aren't programmers can build applications without having to be coders, right? And that's where the heavy lifting has come in, is building a commercial product that allows people who aren't coders to, build apps. But to build the app, once the tool's built, is, you know, as trivial as the application is you're trying to build. So that's all I have to say about that. What other questions might you have, or Adrian, anything you want to ask about now? Now I'm going to qualify you to say, if you have really deep questions, you got to wait till Friday when Derek's on the call.
No, I'll wait till Friday.
Thank you.
I don't know what I don't know. So I'm glad that you went through this for me.
Yeah, I mean,
it's easy, and it's going to be something that I'll be able to do for all our departments. Somebody wants a template, I can do it for them.
Yep.
So it's great.
Eileen, are you still on the call?
Yes. Sorry, had that mute.
Okay. So you've seen me now go through. Eileen is with an organization that's using our G-Stars product. And we are slowly transitioning our G-Stars H-1B folks into a Prime environment where they're going to start fresh by learning how to build their own apps and kind of go forth. And you've seen me now build a couple of really simple apps. And I know you've spent some time with Derek in the admin training. Does that all seem still fairly straightforward for you?
Yeah, I just have to identify all the fields we need, and I'll start working on one shortly. Yes, it does. It's actually similar to something I used many years ago in the design the system. That's probably the company. It's not probably in business anymore, but the ideas are very similar, so it's easy to follow.
Good. But, well, yeah, we didn't invent this. We just hope that we've brought to the market an easier to use fresh brain to the table.
Yeah, it's a lot. Dropping and dragging is a lot easier than typing everything in like it used to be. So that's the nice part about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in G-Stars you have G-script, which you have to understand, some level of JavaScript in order to write G-script, which
right.
My brain is not really wired that way. So.
Yeah, that takes that all away. You don't need that. So yes.
Anything else from anybody?
No.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you sticking around. This is, again, a new thing that we are trying with the after the webinar, kind of a session. And so I will let y'all go. Nicole or anybody else is on the call who would like to follow up with me for a personalized demo, ask additional questions, bring a small group around the table to take a look at things and, from your perspective, your challenges, your what you're trying to achieve, get a hold of me. That's my job, is education.
Thank you so much, Susan.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks to you. Thanks to everybody. Panelists, again, thank you. And audience, thank you. Have a great rest of the day, and everybody stay safe. Wash your hands.
Thank you, Susan. I'll see you Friday.
All righty. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.